And thanks for joining us for another Blunt Business on CannabisRadio.com and what has been a very busy day here at the studios. My next guest represents a world leader in the field of in-vitro diagnostics for over 55 years. BioMérieux is present in 44 countries, serves more than 160 countries with the support of a large network of distributors. And my next guest works with key opinion leaders across the country to find solutions that mitigate inherent risk factors throughout the supply chain for both the cannabis and hemp industries. I'm here with the head of cannabis safety operations for BioMérieux, Maria McIntyre, here on Blunt Business. Thanks for being on.
A pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So I want to give congratulations. BioMérieux was recently awarded the 2022 Food Safety Innovation Award for Predictive Diagnostics. We'll talk about that very quickly in a moment, but it's from the International Association for Food Protection, the IAFP. So for the listeners, I want to read the announcement for some context about what they state here. In the announcement, it said that predictive diagnostics is a game changer, using customer data as a blueprint to predict and protect the customer's future through identification and targeting of potential issues, enables proactive prevention and brand protection, while also shielding manufacturers from liability and compliance concerns. And your Senior VP of Industrial Microbiology talked about that we are working together with the industry to solve the biggest problems through cutting-edge collaborative approaches, a bold shift for the food safety and quality community, and changing the way we work as an industry. So talk to me about this award and what the predictive diagnostics entail.
Sure. So the award is centered around predictive diagnostics. And as you read there, predictive diagnostics are the future. It's leveraging the data that's collected from existing operations and processes to proactively understand what's going on and then predict potential risk factors, giving you the opportunity to mitigate those risks to increase quality and safety and brand protection. So as you indicated, it's really cutting edge and a game changer within the food industry and other industries to leverage this data for its impact.
Now, a little more context. On your website, you make mention of that at the center of predictive diagnostics are data science and bioinformatics. Every farm, factory, and manufacturing facility outputs large amounts of data. And while some is monitored and recorded, a vast amount goes unanalyzed. The data can provide key insights into the health of its facility, suppliers, environment, and the final product. So break this down on how this applies to cannabis.
So certainly so. So the Center of Predictive Diagnostics and Predictive Diagnostics overall uses that data throughout the supply chain to improve processes. So if you look at the cannabis industry specifically, there's steps in process. If it's from cultivation to curing to harvesting to processing, even compliance testing laboratories, each of those steps have many processes in play. And you can look at each process and look at the data that's generated, review the data, and determine where there's some underlying risks and build in those improvements to navigate around those risks to ensure you are not having a problem creep up on you, that the data is demonstrating that there's a risk factor there, ultimately then influencing that brand protection and quality overall proactively.
Now, last year, MJ Biz Daily wrote about validated rapid testing for total yeast and mold in cannabis. We've talked about this on the program before. It might have been a little while since we talked about it. But I know going through this process, I still remember going to the NCIA's Cannabis Business Summit in 2016 and understanding RF technology when it comes to ID tagging and all the different areas to test for yeast, mold, bacteria in general. And when they talk about rapid testing, I mean, you're thinking about the fact that for these companies, they need to be able to go and have the efficiency to go ahead and do the testing process and to continuously make it faster and more efficient. So AOAC International, which is an independent scientific nonprofit known for publishing standardized chemical analysis methods, on June 4th approved rapid tests kits for total yeast and mold and cannabis flower. And one of those was BioMérieux's Tempo yeast and mold count plate, which you get results within 72 to 76 hours. So, Maria, I want to ask about the distinction and the importance that rapid testing gives these accredited ISO IAC 17025 laboratories about the need to get this kind of information to them quickly and efficiently.
Sure, it's certainly impactful. Rapid and AOAC approved microbiology testing methods help the needs of those ISO 17025 accredited labs that you mentioned to quickly and efficiently implement a method for several reasons. First, the AOA certifications demonstrate that that test is fit for purpose. It demonstrates its performance and as well as its scientific rigor. This then allows that technology to be plug and play into those laboratories and then fuels the need for less work within the lab to implement that method. Since extensive work had already been completed through AOAC, it's common for methods with such approval to have less requirements to onboard that technology. So it naturally decreases time, process costs to bringing on a new microbiology testing solution.
We're going to go to commercial break. When we come back, there's so much more to go and talk about. I'm going to give you one word for listeners to think about when we come back, because it's something that you don't realize the harm and just the importance of understanding this and part of the testing process. Aspergillus. I'm going to just leave that right there. We're going to come back after a short break.
Rolling into some sponsors, but we'll be right back with more Blunt Business.
We're back here with Maria McIntyre, head of cannabis safety operations with BioMérieux here on Blunt Business. And I want to take, in your LinkedIn page recently, you posted the following, that molds such as aspergillus, not an extra I, just the one I, are a risk throughout the cannabis supply chain and can cause detriment to brands, the industry, and human health. Prevention is key. I want to take from a story that came in here about that was talking about the ventures of cannabis and hemp industries with Aspergillus. And you were in an interview along with Ben Pascal, who's Chief Business Officer at Invincible Sentinel, and you were also in this conversation. So Ben actually brought up a point in the conversation about Aspergillus. He says that it is caused by inhaling a pathogenic strain that damages the lungs and can be fatal. Many consumers of cannabis are immunocompromised and using it as medicine. However, they are more susceptible to aspergillosis, which might happen if they inhale a contaminated cannabis product. Therefore, Aspergillus testing is critical for these products. Now, I'm going to take another part that's a little more lengthy, but stay with me, folks. I'm getting my point. You cited an article from Mycology 101 from Cannabis Science and Technology. This is where we're going to come from in the whole context of this Aspergillus issue. Quote, for most, mold is instantly recognizable as most people have discarded a piece of fruit or expired leftovers after immediately identifying all the too familiar fuzzy growth. Species of the genera Aspergillus, Penicillium, and Rhizopus are associated with cannabis plant diseases and stability after harvesting and storage. Cultivators, pay attention here. Some of their species are recognized as fungal pathogens, not only for plants, but also for humans. And this presence, already concerned with those in the cannabis industry, will continue to be a critical issue as cannabis demand grows in the marketplace. Both medical and adult use become more commonplace. Some mold species are responsible for several serious respiratory illnesses, including aspergillosis. And the threat is elevated for those who are immunocompromised and using cannabis for health conditions, including cancer. So as I'm talking about this fungal pathogen presence, already concerned with those in cannabis, will continue to be a critical issue as cannabis demand grows in the marketplace, more commonplace for medical and adult use cannabis as well. Some mold species are responsible for several serious respiratory illnesses that Ben just mentioned, including aspergillosis. So what I want to ask is, that point needs to be distinctive, where there are obviously cultivators and people in the plant, in the grow, looking for the mold, but they also need to be more specific on this potential risk of aspergillosis. What do you say about that?
You're spot on there. Molds are relevant and a risk within the cannabis industry, as well as aspergillus. Aspergillus produces spores, and those spores can be inhaled from the environment or by consuming contaminated cannabis, and those spores can colonize into the lungs, creating the lung diseases and other side effects that you mentioned. And given that one mode of consumption of cannabis is through inhalation, it's a direct access to the lungs and increases the chances and risk factors there. And so it's really critical that there's stringent regulations in the cannabis industry for zero tolerance on aspergillus species, particularly against the highest risk aspergillus, which are the toxic species that would cause those risks of illness and disease.
Now, that's just the consumer standpoint. The business standpoint, as we're going to talk about here, they go on to write that, quote, mold contamination can also wreak financial havoc and can affect the entire supply chain, causing devastating losses of product. The economic implications alone can cause any cultivator to pause and re-examine the system in place. The investment up front in safety and quality measures is worth the risk of potential issues, including waste, further down the line. So how do you see the companies that are out there responding to this issue in regards to that bigger picture we always talk about of compliance?
Companies are responding a lot different now than they have in the past. Companies are responding to the mold issues and the bigger picture of compliance and becoming more proactive in their approach to protect their brand profitability as well as quality and product safety, and really looking forward to the future of the industry. And part of that is leveraging other industries such as food, pharmaceuticals, and nutraceuticals to see what compliance look like and making shifts within their current operations to better prepare for what's to come in the future, as well as to ensure that they are creating products and putting products to the market that are safer.
So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more and take some final questions here with Maria McIntyre, Head of Cannabis Safety Operations for BioMérieux here on Blunt Business. We'll be back after a short break.
Rolling into some sponsors, but we'll be right back with more Blunt Business.
And we're back for final questions with Maria McIntyre, Head of Cannabis Safety Operations for BioMérieux. And when we come back here now, this is where I just come across and talk about where compliance, we're breaking it down here on the show on a regular basis because we have to understand of the risks that come across. And all I can do is I can just say over and over every time we have to deal with this when it comes to the issues we're going to have when this plant is going to be legalized and the kind of things we need to make sure that we're aware of going forward. So it's part of that we have to worry about as well. Not only that, you also have the issues of thinking about that you don't want to go through what Canada's gone through, where they've had companies that have had to throw away and burn and destroy billions of dollars, and companies have had to go and resurrect themselves after going through major financial issues because of a simple thing as compliance. It's not something that people want to go ahead and spend their money on. It's not something you want to be worried about. You want to make your money and not have to keep putting into the infrastructure because you have to worry about these little things where they can become much more. And that's the other part that goes on as well. Another story I want to make up a point is that what other states are trying to do as well to kind of fight this as well. Because in Vermont recently, they talked about they're looking at guidance now to eliminate plastic waste from the state's cannabis industry. So their Cannabis Control Board is looking to change, and their guidance called Guidance on Packaging. They're talking about that packaging is intended for consumer purchase at a retail location should be reusable and should not be using plastic. So even just in the packaging end, that compliance goes here. But when it comes back to inside the grow and the testing is out there, when you're looking at what's being done now, what is the best course of action, Maria, when it comes to testing? Rapid testing, should that be the common course? How often, the grow is being inspected and analyzed, taking samples and examining them pretty further? What can you tell me about is the best course that you consult with others in their operations?
The best course of action that I've seen to mitigate and prevent Aspergillus contamination, as well as other molds and contaminants, is having that basic understanding and education, knowing those risks so you can proactively prevent. And some of those best practices are to first know your environment, create sanitation practices throughout your supply chain to increase safety, employ processes for in-process testing and environmental monitoring. Part of that environmental component can be your packaging as well as the incoming materials. It's important to understand what contaminations you may be bringing into your facility through your supply chain. Also implementing post-harvest controls to manage temperature and water activity and really improve that process throughout. And then also to create collaborative partnerships. You're not alone in navigating Aspergillus or other contaminations. And there's resources such as myself, including BioMérieux, that are able to help and provide more information on those organisms, but also the course of action may vary slightly from your operations to someone else's. So leveraging the resources is certainly impactful.
And so, as always, we're so happy that everyone at BioMérieux and the cannabis division there are doing so much great work to help get this across and just to offer the technology that's needed to make it easier for everyone out there in the cultivation space to go ahead and make sure the plants are being checked out and being analyzed and processed and assessed properly. And even offering where you have the tools that you made available when it comes to the rapid testing kit we were talking about before. You have, again, not just where the AOAC has performance tested methods for what they've given. They have also said that it's now the Gene Up SLM2 and the EHEC are also approved for cannabis and hemp. And that because of what you're getting, the portfolio that you have of products available across pathogen and quality indicator suite of solutions, it's your long-standing commitment to robust, innovative, and validated science. So with that said, let's go and talk about what you're able to offer at BioMérieux for companies out there. Take a minute to go ahead and talk to people here on the website. Just to go and give the website real quick, it's BioMérieux-industry or -industry.com. Let me spell it out. BioMerieux-industry.com. When people go to the website, what can you go and tell them about the solutions you have?
There's lots of innovation. So there's many innovative solutions delivering efficiency through the history of robust and reliable science. That can be found on that website and on our cannabis specific page at go.biomerieux.com. And the solutions that you'll find there are multifold. They're to support the needs of compliance testing laboratories throughout the U.S., as well as to look at the cultivators and processors and those needs for those internal testing that we previously mentioned. And it's all anchored around the needs of the industry, around scientific integrity to give you the reliable and reproducible results. You mentioned the AOAC certificates that we have in numerous arenas with Tempo and Gene Up, and some new innovations that are coming out. That scientific validations really then demonstrate the scientific integrity. The tests are simple, the processes are simple, and just a few easy steps, you're able to conduct the test and be able to get your results, as well as you'll see information on how our reputation, our support, and our hand-in-hand partnership really is an asset to walk together with you and your operations at where you're at to increase safety and science within your organization through the efficiency of the testing solutions.
This has been a great conversation. And you know what? I'm glad we didn't go overly long and winded about this because, we could go much more into the weeds and much more technical, but I wanted to make this episode as feasible and as pliable as possible to make the understanding. It's a section of compliance. Compliance is important. Compliance is key. We talk about that. And even as you said it yourself, that prevention is key when it comes to making sure that any particular molds, yeast, bacteria, any of these kind of parts that could be contaminating a plant, and making sure that the testing's done to go ahead and remove all these different portions that could be bad and can cause, obviously, not just consumer harm, but economic harm to your business. Pay attention to it. That's what we're saying. So just to close things out, BioMérieux is also listed on the Euronext Paris stock market under the symbol BIM. You can also, if you're also in the trading end for the for stocks, they're also listed on the OTC markets at BMXMF. And the investor site, by the way, BioMérieux.com, BioMerieux.com, and at go.biomerieux.com, as Maria mentioned here on the website. So, Maria, thank you again for being on with us. Thank you for taking time out. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here.
And not to not undercut what's going on, but for a company that has had so many years working in the space, and what you've been able to do, in the past 50 years or actually almost 60 years actually, is remarkable. So it's really wonderfully appreciated by the cannabis industry that BioMérieux decided to be a part of this division and really to be a part of helping the cannabis industry grow and thrive. So thank you for all of that, especially with your role there as head of cannabis safety operations. Really appreciate you taking time out. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Listeners, thanks for listening in, checking through this conversation. I know it might have been a little bit very advanced conversation for you, but it's important. That's why I do it on this show here on Blunt Business, and that's why you listen in every week. That's why you subscribe to the show. That's why I know you'll give a 5-star rating and you'll review this show, because, I believe that the show deserves it. We put this out for the listeners every week. This is a service. We're educating, we're informing. We are going to let you know and keep you aware and keep you on the top of everything. So thanks for listening in, listeners. I'll talk to you next time. The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.